For joining us again for another Kneat Insights webinar. This is one of our favorite webinars because we are hearing from one of our great partner network. We're hearing today from MMR Consulting. We're really great to have them with us to talk a little bit about CSV and CSA being in the validation fast lane. It's sure to be a great webinar, and we're very happy to have you all here. So we'll get into it. If you haven't joined us for one of our webinars before, just some quick housekeeping here. You are in listen-only mode. You're able to see our broadcast, but we cannot see or hear from you. So you don't have to worry about being on microphone, muting, or cleaning up your background behind you. But we do still want to hear from you. We have the chat box over to the right-hand side of your video. You can click on chat. You can, first of all, let us know where you're calling in from. Great to see you, Pablo Andres. You're calling in from Costa Rica. That's fantastic. We love to see the global audience that we have, hear where people are calling in from, and also tell us what you think about the presentation as it's going on. Our speakers today will be able to see your chats, so feel free to put things in there. I'll be in there engaging with folks as well. We always love to hear your insights, hear what you think about the presentation, and interact with us along the way. We will also have an interactive poll. In the polling tab there, you can go ahead, open it, and answer. You will be able to answer where you are on your journey to digitization. We'll come to that in a few minutes here as we look at, we like to get a feeling of where the audience is at, where you guys are at for digitizing validation so that we know what we're talking to. And finally, we have our Q&A tab, which I was distracted a little bit by one question already coming in from Av. But that Q&A is a great place for you to put your questions. At the end of our featured presentation today, we'll be able to talk with our two speakers about any questions you guys have. So feel free to put questions in that chat anytime throughout the presentation or in that Q&A box, rather, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end before we wrap up the webinar. We'll answer as many as we can live. We'll take the most popular first. So if there's one that you really want to hear, be sure to upvote that question. Any that we don't get to by the end of the webinar, don't worry, because we will follow up with you. We take all of those questions that have names on them. We make sure to get you the answers, and we'll follow up personally from Kneat with the answers that you're looking for and what next steps, if any, there are to go along with that. If at the end of the webinar you have any questions yourself, after the webinar you want to ask questions, you want to find more about Kneat, you can always email us at info@kneat.com. That's info@kneat.com. And that's a place you can contact us for anything. You can also reach out on social media. We're on LinkedIn and X, or formerly Twitter, where you can always find more information. If you have to cut out early today, or if for some reason you're not watching this live, don't worry about it. You will get an email with a link to the recording and a link to the slides from today's presentation to reference back to. So you'll be able to catch up perfectly fine from that and be able to reference everything back at the end. So that's all of our housekeeping for today. Quick stop here on our copyright and disclaimer slide for Kneat Solutions. And then I'm really happy to talk about what we'll be hearing about today. So like I said, we are welcoming James Irons, the Director of Project Services from MMR Consulting. MMR Consulting is a great partner of Kneat Solutions. We've worked together for a long time, and we're really happy to have James here to talk about CSV and CSA. Speaking along with James is Kneat's very own process engineer, Darren Geeney. If you've seen Kneat at a conference, if you've been to our webinars before, or if you've been to our very own conference, Validate, Darren will be a familiar face and voice to you. So we're excited to hear from both of them in a little bit. First, though, we're going to do our welcome, which is what I'm doing now. I'm going to talk a little bit about Kneat as a company and Kneat Gx as a product. So you'll get a little bit of that sales pitch, just a few minutes, I promise. Why people and companies use Kneat Gx for their digital validation. Then we'll go into our featured presentation from James. Like I mentioned, we'll then do our Q&A. You'll be able to ask James and Darren any questions you have around CSA, CSV, MMR, or Kneat. All those topics are open. And then I'll talk a little bit about upcoming events and webinars for Kneat and where else you can see us. Really great to see all of these people coming in. We have a lot of people from Dublin, the UK, East Germany, even down in North Carolina and Pennsylvania. So great. Thank you all for coming and letting us know where you're tuning in from. That's great to see. I do want to hear a little bit more about you, though. So go ahead and click into our poll tab if you haven't already, and let us know, where are you on your journey to digitizing validation? Are you starting today with this webinar? This is the first you've heard about digital validation, and you wanted to dive right into CSA and CSV. That's great. It doesn't seem to be a popular option for many. But we also have initial discovery. You've got some preparation work done. You're maybe ready to, or you think you're ready to start moving your validation projects digital. But you're getting some discussions done and you're trying to find more information. That's where a lot of people right now say that they're at in their stage. Maybe you're about to launch your first digital validation project. You're launching it. You're getting ready to get into it, and you're just finding more information. I see a few people coming in with that. Darius, thank you for that. You're saying C. And then maybe you're already have multiple projects being delivered digitally and you're considering how to scale right now. And that's important to you, is figuring out how to keep moving, how to maybe bring in more projects, more facilities under digital validation. Well, right now we are at a pretty even 50-50 split between initial discovery and multiple projects, or some projects, and considering how to scale. So that's a pretty even split right there. That's great to see. We love to see how that works. And a few answers still coming into the chat. B, yep. C, okay, great. Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for answering that. That just gives us a scale to see where people are at as we talk through the presentation today. So we'll keep that in mind. I'll go ahead and leave that poll open. So if you're a little bit behind in the live, or if you haven't gotten a chance to answer yet, you still can. Meanwhile, I will talk a little bit about Kneat. Hopefully you know who Kneat is if you're joining one of our webinars, but that's not exactly a prerequisite. So I want to talk about Kneat. We are a global organization with operations. Our headquarters actually are in Ireland. We've got operations all the way around the world, but our headquarters are in Ireland. Myself, I'm in the USA. I'm just outside of Washington, D.C. We've got folks in France, Germany, Switzerland, Denmark, Canada, just to name a few of the places, but we are truly a global organization. We are listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. We're a publicly traded company, and thus we not only hold ourselves to a high standard just of quality in ourselves, but we're held to that by our stakeholders, our investors, and being a publicly traded company. We do produce Kneat Gx, which is the validation platform of choice for 8 of the top 10 global life science companies, and that includes 3 of the 4 COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers. So we'll talk a little bit more about why those companies choose us, but safe to say that we have an established foothold in manufacturers and life sciences industry. And within those, more than those, we have 40,000 plus users in our software as a service platform, Kneat Gx, with 100 plus customers across 350 locations around the world. We've got more than 40 certified global partners, such as MMR we're hearing from today, and a robust partner program to help partner companies talk about Kneat and bring Kneat as a solution to many of their clients as well. All of our development for Kneat Gx is done in-house. We do not outsource any of our programming, any of our development for our software, and that is really just to increase quality, just to make sure we're hitting the maximum quality that we want, and to make sure everything is secure, that our information is all kept secure. We do take security very seriously. We're ISO certified with 9001 2015 and 27001 ISO certifications that we keep up every year. And we're proud to hold those. So that's Kneat as a company. Kneat Gx is the software as a service validation lifecycle management platform that digitizes validation from end to end, enabling regulated companies to make validation easier, faster, and smarter. That's the sales copy. But what it really means is everything that was involved previously with validating your processes, testing your equipment, testing your processes, testing your workflow, all of that used to be done on paper with wet signatures that you had to track someone down, maybe through a warehouse or a facility to try to find them to get them to sign. All of that is now digital. You're able to access it from any device, a computer, a tablet, a phone, as long as it has internet connection. Anywhere in the world, you can access your information. You can do those validation testing live with your device. You can sign it there, you can file it away, and more importantly, when you need that information in the future, no matter how far past it was, you can easily search and find the information from before, so you're audit ready at any time. All of this just to be easy, simple, and faster. And that is why 8 of the world's top 10 global life science companies trust Kneat, because it is one platform that works for any work process. It's purpose built to be compliant with Part 11 or Annex 11, and it eliminates 100% of paper from the validation lifecycle. And that's not just paper in, like I mentioned, chasing someone down, getting wet signatures, writing everything down, but it's storage problems. It's the risks of storing that much paper for that long. Things get damaged. It changes all of that to a digital workflow, and it's proven to reduce cycle times, labor hours, and validation costs. It's an easy platform to use, to train, and to scale up, and it allows you and your companies to be audit ready at any time. Sorry, this slide here got a little bit messed up, but those aren't just our numbers. We take independent benchmarked studies with our customers to find those times as well. These numbers are a little bit hard to read, but it is talking about the reduced labor hours, reduced validation costs, and all of that. I highly recommend, if you want more information about this, to go check out our case studies on our website, kneat.com/case studies. You can see some of our partners and our customers here: Merck, Biogen, Fujirebio, and Elevate Bio. See some of their results with Kneat and how they've been using it. We'll also hear a little bit from MMR today on that as well. So I've gotten through the marketing chat. I've gotten through the sales pitch. Now I'm really happy to move on to our feature presentation. I'm sure you are all as well. So I'm really happy to have James Irons here, Director of Project Services from MMR Consulting, who's going to give our main presentation. And from Kneat's side, backing him up, we have Darren Geeney. Gentlemen, I will let you do your own introductions, but we're really glad to have you here. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Appreciate it, James. Don't really need to do much introduction. You've kind of covered it already. James Irons, Director of Project Services for MMR Consulting. Wanted to thank the Kneat team for having us on. Looking forward to chatting with you guys. We'll do my best to make this as interesting as possible and engaging, because a lot of times validation cannot seem that way, but there's ways to do things better, and that's what we're here to talk about. Darren?
Yeah, hi guys. My name is Darren Gainey, and again, with the introductions, I think James covered everything. So I'm looking forward to chatting today with you. Looking forward to chatting with James as well about CSA. I have a particular interest in CSA and CSV. So I enjoy trying to spread the gospel of making validation easier, faster, and quicker, but just as effective. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right, well, let's kick it off. So I think we just covered this. So we're going to talk about like understanding CSV and CSA, the kind of a comparison of those, where they came from, and how to really establish a CSA program. So my contact information is here. Please feel free to reach out to me via email if you have any questions or you want to have a chat after this webinar. And everybody will receive a copy of the slides as well. So let's talk about like really the background of Part 11, right? So this has really been for decades, and it really ages myself well. Like who remembers Part 11 coming out, right? And that was, I think, issued around March of 97, and it was effective in August of 97 for context. So that's the year I started college, and just in time really to join the fun of a regulated environment. And these regulations were intended to encourage the use of electronic technology while still, protecting public health. And so what we've seen, so far is a lot of misuse. The FDA has seen GAMP misused for years, and piles of paper, screen prints. I mean, trust me, I've been part of those efforts over my 25 years of computer system validation, especially when I first entered this industry. And it was almost like, boy, the more binders, the better. So seeing all those things for complex systems to prove every ounce of requirements have been met, and it would be like to satiate your QA either the requirements at the facility or the people, and that was never necessary, and it wasn't. And it's been a lot of extra legwork because of that. There's been growing complexity in software systems lately with cloud and software as a service, and that need for innovation, has driven this now evolution into CSA. So, now we've got platforms built on newer tech, and they're allowing us to limit testing and provide a much more lean, based approach. I mean, we're even seeing things like manufacturing execution systems in the cloud. We're seeing, systems with cell-based backup and blends of on and off-prem backup or totally off-prem, cloud systems, and it's working, and it's exciting. So that kind of just sets the stage where we are and where we're going. So we all know computer system validation. I would think that everybody on this call does, but in all honesty, I have a lot of conversations with folks where it's still kind of new to them, even though it's existed. And also the approach for CSA, there's people that really are like, this is old hat, and there's a lot of folks that are looking to learn more about it, and that's why we're here today. So really, the goal of CSA, is for that CSV to actually be value added. Right, it's a value-added practice that ensures the quality of systems. Shifting that focus of documentation onto critical thinking and testing using a more like flexible risk-based approach. So why is that important in our industry, the life sciences industry? And it's definitely gaining efficiency in our qualification activities, and as an end result, getting those life-saving drugs out the door faster, to the end user, which is the patient. And like having a compliant system should not drag out the release of life-saving products.
Yeah, just a point I might just speak there just for a second. Is like one of the things that I noticed with CSA is that the regulations aren't changing, right? And that the initial intent of the CSV approach was to use a risk-based assessment, and as you've rightly said, James, kind of misused and misunderstood for a long time. So now CSA is trying to push that agenda where you're concentrating on, the risk associated with the product, the effect on the patient, and on the actual product itself. So the regs aren't changing. We'll still be compliant using the CSA approach. It's just a different and basically kind of a smarter implementation to get it validated, really.
Yep. Thanks, Darren. So this was actually first released in like September of 2022, and and at a high level, it's a risk-based framework, like Darren said, ensuring the reliability of the software and regulated activities. And we're emphasizing critical thinking here, right? And that's common sense. And this is, you hear a lot of people say the same thing, but common sense isn't so common. And we've got to leverage more critical thinking and common sense, better risk management, and focus on patient safety and product quality.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we're pushing out a product like that will be used by a patient.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what we're doing this for. So some key objectives of CSA are encouraging innovation in the use of modern software technologies and ensuring that resources are focused on those high risk areas impacting product quality and patient safety. So, I really like the idea of using even flowcharts for newer software as requirements specifications, because it's just easier to identify where the risk is by leveraging a URS flowchart when using newer platforms built more for like a Pharma 4.0 environment. And to note, like, we don't even have to limit the application of CSA to software. That's just one component within a computerized system, which is in turn part of a larger environment. So you really have to take like a holistic approach, and is needed to ensure that the overall computerized system, like say, like a new digital app built for guidance of cleaning equipment that's fully Part 11 compliant, is really fit for intended use in support of the business process at a facility. So like today we'll talk about like applying risk assessments, vendor audits, leveraging scripted and unscripted testing to deliver systems in a much more timely manner, whether they're locally installed or cloud-based. So some key differences in CSA and CSV. Or for CSV, what did we do in the past, right? And this still happens. I still see this to this day. Focus on an exhaustive testing and documentation, and that results in extensive resource-intensive activities, right? Hours. Time is money. Where CSA is that focus on the risk-based testing and the critical thinking, leveraging vendor documentation, encouraging efficiency, flexibility, and innovation while maintaining compliance. So some background here is, for computer system validation, computerized system validation practices really haven't changed much, since even the general principles of software validation were finalized, I think in 2002, and that document was referenced by the FDA guidance for industry for the Part 11 ERES scope and application in '03 and again in '07, and the FDA's computerized systems used in clinical investigations. So, like basically, this is old, what we're looking at here. The average publication date of the software engineering references in the general principles of software validation is 1993. And like the testing methodologies and tools and techniques have advanced significantly since then, especially in the past 7 to 8 years. So consequently, the current state of validation is, influenced by the misapplication of guidance for product systems and by long outdated software engineering practices. So during this same time, the pharmaceutical industry implemented lifecycle models such as ISP GAMP5, and that supports a patient-centric and QRM approach to the assurance of computerized systems. But unfortunately, in many cases, it wasn't effectively implemented in the field, because of the absence of critical thinking, inability to embrace new testing technologies, et cetera, et cetera. So there have been deficiencies in historical approaches to validation that have led to data integrity risks, such as like lack of process definitions and data flows, poorly defined configuration settings, gaps in the development of procedures and training for review of electronic data and audit trails, and gaps in other aspects of validation for intended use. So as I talk about some things, that have gone wrong, we'll do a slide on where we've gone wrong formally. And a lot of that's ineffectual application of that risk-based approach combined with unskilled validation quality practitioners. And that's resulted in excessive time spent generating these massively detailed test specifications, overemphasis on gathering the supporting evidence. Like, I mean, who on this call has probably done, 1,000 screen prints for a giant ERP system or some kind of rollout, right? That the whole time you're doing this, you're like, why is this necessary? And then you're burning time, dry running of test scripts, reducing execution errors that are caused by the excessive level of detail in these test instructions. And, that focus on, like, it was always like, I remember being in my early 20s doing this, and it was like, I got to get this protocol executed perfect so I don't have to hear about it. I don't want to have to line out anything, an initial and date, and write a reason. And it was more of a focus on an error-free, just execution of getting this thing done, like avoiding documentation errors, than actually focusing on error detection of the system being qualified. So like what we've learned again is just that common sense isn't so common,
Yeah, it just seems the traditional way of doing this, James. You mentioned there was kind of like a process-centric approach. The process says I have to do this. So the process says I have to take a screenshot. The process says I have to have 5 pages of testing to test a login screen. What's the value in that? What's the benefit in that? Very little when you think about it. You say, James, like it's common sense. But common sense, if you could bottle it and sell it, you'd be a millionaire. Do you know what I mean? So I think you're right in that sense, that it's a case of, what does the process say? What can we show the auditor? What can we show quality to show that we validated this correctly? We'll give you 10 screenshots and 5 pages of testing when 1 page could have been totally sufficient.
Exactly. So getting into like what are the core principles of CSA, and they're really these 4 primarily. And understanding these like kind of will help right our wrongs and help us all move forward as an industry. So taking that risk-based approach, prioritizing testing and assurance activities based on the risk to the patient safety and product quality, the critical thinking aspect, applying that to determine the appropriate level of assurance activities, leveraging automation and technology. So like using automated tools and technology to improve efficiency and reduce human error, and do the documentation proportional to the risk. That's what we were just talking about. Tailoring that documentation to the risk level, focusing on what's necessary to ensure quality.
Yeah, like I think one of the aspects that was missed in CSV a long time ago was leveraging 2 things: leveraging the automation, the technology, like automatic code reviews now, like something that probably wasn't possible when the first guidelines were brought out. Now we have code review tools that review your code much better than a human. We also have things like leveraging documentation from your vendor. Before we'd be a bit reluctant to take the vendor documentation, but if you're spending all that money to audit them, to talk to them, to verify that everything's okay, why not use what they have? Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's take their design documentation. Right, let's take their yours. Let's accept that their testing is done. Why? Because we've audited them. We know that they know what they're doing. let's bring them on board and take their documentation with us. Let's use their evidence where we can.
Yeah, exactly. Like let's leverage experienced SMEs and apply that critical thinking to determine the test cases and direction. And if you're the person that's the validation resource, you might not be the subject matter expert, but leverage the folks that are there, leverage the vendors, leverage the users, that are the end users of these systems, and just generate that supporting evidence only where it brings the value to the quality of the testing, that scripted and unscripted, right? So, and if you don't know the difference, I mean, we know what scripted testing is, and unscripted is really just shortening. It can be a lot of that same things, but you're not going to write down the 50 steps it took you to get from A to B because it's just not necessary. You capture the end result, you're good. So you're spending more time actively finding those defects and less time generating these specifications, in advance.
Yeah, theoretically, you could look at it and say, right, if we're bringing a system, the critical testing should be about 5% of my testing, because not everything is going to be critical, right? Not everything is going to be patient and product impacting, right? 70% could be unscripted testing. It's not high risk, so therefore I can test it a different way. And ad hoc testing is another option then as well. So as you said, James, leverage your SMEs, not just in, say, software validation, the SMEs for the process that you're looking to digitize. They'll know the temperature controllers that need to be monitored more closely than the user screen. So that's where you spend your time testing the system rather than making the documentation right so it looks better.
That's exactly right. So what are like the FDA's expectations under CSA? So I actually was lucky enough to go to a conference a few weeks ago here in North Carolina and speak with a FDA auditor about these, ask them about how they've seen this adopted lately. And they are seeing a lot of companies take this approach and they love it. Their documented expectations are really focusing on product quality, ensuring that software is used in production and quality systems reliably supports the product quality and the patient safety considerations, leveraging those existing resources like we were just talking about. And that's vendor documentation, right? Previous validation efforts, industry standards, and the continuous improvement side. So when I say like the vendor documentation, Darren's kind of touched on this, auditing the vendors that especially have these newer cloud-based platforms and accepting their quality system. So you do not have to do all of this OQ testing that years ago we had to do for on-prem systems and show how every single nook and cranny of that platform worked. You're accepting the quality system, you're accepting how they maintain it. So then even when they do their updates, they're quick. You can easily adopt those as well. You can assess the risk of those as well quickly and have a validated system up and running and maintain the validated state much, much easier. And these all sound easy, but a lot of times as an industry, we'll flunk that test because of like our archaic approaches to quality assurance and to system qualification. So like what we have to do as like industry leaders is change minds and consider like this new approach, and this like validation 4.0 is really what I consider it, with the technology that's come with the newer platforms like Kneat and other platforms that are cloud-based, is we've got to also change our approach to compliance with them. So like some benefits of CSA over your typical CSV approach are, number one, efficiency, right? And time. I mean, time is money, right? And the increased efficiency is massive. I mean, you're reducing unnecessary testing and documentation. So think of all the things these resources can do if they're not taking 1,000 screen prints, right? If we've set our stage and validated in this more efficient manner, it's going to help us with innovation, adopting new technologies and approaches in software development and validation. It's going to give us better risk management, focusing on managing the risks, that impact product quality and patient safety. And that key thing for regulatory compliance, it aligns with what the FDA really wants to see in reducing that risk of non-compliance. Like that's what the auditor told me. She's like, we don't want to see somebody pull out a wagon of 50 binders to show how one system or piece of equipment is validated. That's the last thing they want to see, This is where going digital helps us so much with like newer tech in the cloud, like Kneat, for instance, and that leveraging the quality system, like I've said, and limiting our testing by accepting that. it just helps us get a system in place so much faster.
Yeah, I
So
think
then there's, yeah, go ahead, please.
so I think one of the other benefits as well, James, is that as you mentioned earlier, like you're not spending your time on unnecessary documentation, right? So you're actually testing the product or you're testing the system itself. So
Hmm.
you are actually going to be building a better system because you're going to be concentrating on the parts that have product and quality impact. That's where it's going to go wrong in the production line. That's where it's going to go wrong somewhere. Okay, let's test it there. So I'll go down as many branches there as I could versus the user screen. Okay, what's the worst thing that can happen if I can't log in? I can't start it up. Fine. Let's go down that part of the rabbit hole that controls temperature, that controls pressure, that's timing. Let's really test that to make sure that when we go into production, we don't see these little hiccups as we go along of, oops, we missed that in testing because we spent 2 days testing a part of it that wasn't as impacting or wasn't as critical.
Absolutely. Thanks. And getting just a little bit more into detail before we start talking about like what it would be like to implement this in your facility. So CSA and GAMP. So CSA is very consistent, with GAMP 5, right? It applies a risk-based approach to test documentation and supporting evidence, following the good software engineering principles and practices. But validation itself is often erroneously regarded as requiring a very strict formal structure. That's the time suck too of it, and direct QA oversight to fulfill that compliance checkbox requirement. And in reality, like the underlying objective of validation is to support the intended use of a computerized system in support of a business process. And that can be best achieved by leveraging that scripted and unscripted testing approaches like we've just been talking about. And assurance activities can occur like outside of a rigorous predefined test specifications and still support patient safety and product quality and data integrity. Um, it's just we're taking more risk. We're defining what that risk is, and we're accepting these companies' quality systems so that we can get these systems out the door faster. I mean, the ultimate objective of testing should always be the reduction of defects before that system goes live, and that's I think Darren, what you were speaking to. Like the CSA approach expedites that in support of patient safety, product quality, and data integrity, and then if you have automated tools, they should be used when possible to test more functions in a timely manner.
Yeah, like things like you could possibly automate your regression testing. So every time you make a change, you have some automated testing that you do for regression testing. You're taking out the human error element, but you're still making sure that that's still maintained correctly, and that any code changes you made haven't impacted anything in the past. Like there's nothing worse than doing regression testing, and you find something then, and it's down to human error. Let's automate that. Let's make sure that that goes quickly so we can concentrate on the changes that we've made.
Right, exactly. So a few steps to implement CSA at your facility. Identifying like the critical software at your site first, like by determining what software systems are actually critical to product quality and patient safety. It's going to be like your LIMS systems, your validation systems, your ERP systems, your batch records, your MES. And perform a risk assessment to identify the potential risks associated with the software use, and then plan that strategy by developing a strategic approach tailored to the software's risk profile, focusing on high risk areas. Perform that risk-based testing while ensuring the documentation generated as part of this effort is proportional to the risk. That's a big part of this. And then monitor the software performance and quality, just implementing those improvements as necessary. And within like the CSA framework, all testing, no matter when it occurs in the system life cycle, may contribute to traceability and to the assurance of the fitness for intended use. And additionally, like provided that you have assessed or audited like a system supplier, like what we've talked about, you can directly leverage that vendor testing to provide assurance that the system meets the business requirements instead of repeating functional testing. So a lot of times I like to compare this to think of it like leveraging FAT testing for equipment, for SAT or commissioning, right? Like we're not going to reinvent the wheel. Why are we not going to use what these vendors have? We audit them, we accept it, it limits our testing. Same thing as you would do with FAT to SAT through commissioning of equipment, right? And a lot of times, because the manufacturing associates and the guys doing equipment validation don't really think the same as the CSV guys, but really the process is overall what we're doing the same, and we can leverage this same type of approach for equipment the same as we do for computerized systems. So, Do you want to say something, Darren?
No, I agree. I mean, it's something I think that like CSV initially was come up for medical device, right? That's where it came from. That's where
Right,
that's
right.
where its birth was. No, CSA can be applied to, I think, pharmaceutical, biological, wherever it needs to go, right? Because as you were saying, and you're James, you're hammering on this message, and you're totally right. It's a common sense. It's a common sense approach, right? That's what it is. It's common sense. Let's use what's already there. Let's leverage everything we can leverage, and use that to support our submission that the system is in fact validated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's important to apply the critical thinking to the planned test activities to ensure they reflect the intended use of the system, and mitigate the corresponding risks to the patient safety, product quality, and data integrity. And like, you have requirements that are classified as low or medium risk, maybe verified by maybe some unscripted or leverage testing, and then you've got ones that are high risk within the overall computerized system that could be like tested with like UAT testing or some other scripted testing. And
Mhm.
just remember that the regular key thing to remember is like regulatory requirements define that the software must be fit for intended use, but it doesn't tell you how to achieve that, right? You
Yeah.
just have to it just has to be fit for intended use. So that the testing documentation can vary in depth and detail and still provide the same level of assurance. you know as in
Yeah.
like user defining use for CSA at your facility, you would need to define how to implement the most like effective, least burdensome mitigation of the risk to patient safety and product quality and data integrity as part of your overall validation process. So
Yeah. I suppose you're right there, James, in the term that you actually used, and that appears in the original CSV guidance, the least
Mhm.
burdensome. And I think everybody forgot about that term, least burdensome.
Burdensome,
They just
yeah,
went and
yeah.
they changed it to most burdensome, really.
Max burdensome, yeah. How
Yeah,
much can you carry to the document library at once, and how many
yeah,
people can you get to carry your 75 binders for implementing one limb system with 4 builds
yeah.
in it? So, yeah, it's totally true. So, if we're applying that risk-based approach, we're doing vendor auditing and leveraging testing, which is what we've kind of been hammering home about. Um, you know, Applying a review of that vendor's quality management system, including their testing of an application, and then you can leverage that. And that means quicker system implementation, less time spent on future changes, et cetera. And it's funny, I think the FDA auditor asked how many people in this room that I was at had a vendor audit, like a proper vendor auditing program for computerized systems, and only half of them raised their hand. And I was pretty shocked, right? So, that's something absolutely to get on the books, because that's the beginning of being able to leverage, something like this and the CSA approach. And, the key to this approach is to have that, documented review of the vendor's deliverables, and your vendor is going to be willing to supply their test documentation, and that'll be part of it. And that's normal now with these Pharma 4.0 validation 4.0 ready companies, and they're willing to speak on the behalf of the clients, have if needed to even defend their methodology. And this is where like newer technology really starting to trump old technology, and the systems created with that mindset give you absolutely the best chance of success here. So like an example would be like, this is just a really basic example of a risk assessment where, you'd have an impact level of patient, product, data integrity, here, and showing what level of testing you would have, whether it's out of the box, configured, or custom. And, the direct impact would be like the function had, a direct impact on product quality, right? Or patient health or data integrity. And like, that could be a critical process parameter, maybe associated with, a batch release, or and you'd have an indirect product or an indirect impact that would be maybe an example of that would be like maybe like a report on like something simple, like a generating a report on like a training record of a resource. And then something with no impact would be, it just doesn't have any impact at all on product quality. And this is just, something you could use to help define your levels of testing, at a at a facility, and just to kind of help set your baseline right for how much testing is required. But like, overall, like this is all changing like a mindset. It really is, and it's changing a way of thinking. We've all been doing this, but we just have it. A lot of times, it's just not done correctly, and And for me, a lot of times I think it's building relationships across the board with your manufacturing team, your quality team, your validation team, your IT team, and getting everybody to speak the same language and know that we're all rowing in the same direction. And that can be hard because those groups that I just named all are different types of people, but you're all trying to accomplish the same thing. And we all want these drugs out the door faster for the patients. And that's why we need to take these two, leverage approaches like CSA. So some challenges and considerations to take. And let's see, we're at 240, so we're doing good. Are transitioning from this is what I was just talking about, from that CSV, if you're in the middle of this at a site, to CSA is tough, and it can require full on cultural shift within your organization. And I've seen this done successfully, and it was great to hear recently that the FDA is seeing it done a lot more too. But you've got to train your staff in what risk-based approaches are and critical thinking. And you might think that can't be taught, but it can. And old dogs can learn new tricks. And, I think there's a lot of people that have been in the same roles and pharma companies for years, and some of it doesn't change, but this has to come from the top down, and changing how folks want, in making large cultural changes in how you think. And so balancing risk and that documentation can be a tough change to implement throughout a large organization. And that's why you have to find that balance between thorough documentation and efficient processes, right? And that's where this does take a little bit of legwork at the beginning, but once it's set up and understood for years, you're so much more efficient, and the outcome is so good. So, the key is collaboration. That's what I was talking about previously too, between all these different groups. It's not just internal collaboration, but it's external collaboration, it's industry collaboration, it's working with software vendors, leveraging their assurance activities, and their documentation, leveraging critical thinking. Like I said, I really like to use data flows for URSs now instead of full blown written requirements, or a combination of both, to, better understand risk and really be able to visualize it.
Yeah, I suppose as you were saying earlier, James, for something like an off-prem system, you could be generating your data at site that could be stored in a server somewhere else in the world. Let's look at the user requirements. As you said, James, as a kind of a diagram. It passes through this particular provider.
Right.
As the person who's bought this piece of software is going to use the system. I mean, you're going to have to trust somebody like Amazon Web Services that they're doing their job. You're not going to be able to test that. You're going to have to take their documentation and accept it and live with
Right.
it, because they're the best in the world at what they do. So as you said, let's leverage what they do. We've audited them. Let's go from there and let's concentrate on what's important.
Exactly. Yep. And those companies do a great job with documentation now around these things. They get it and they understand it, because it's security on their end too, and it's their reputation as well. So really, we're going to come to a conclusion and then hit up some questions. CSA really represents that significant shift towards a more efficient risk-based approach, to software assurance at an organization. And it aligns with that FDA's Case for Quality initiative, and it focuses on what truly matters, and that's patient safety, right, and product quality. So we want to embrace this. We want to embrace CSA to improve compliance, foster innovation, and enhance overall product quality. So I just like this picture, and because honestly, if you really want to change your life, if you want to change how you do things, you have to change the way you think. And we all get set in our ways, but there's so much out there to help folks really change how you think and evolve. And I think this is the next step to. There's a lot of companies that say they're going to change how drugs are made, and they're going to change everything, but it all ends up the same. And we've got to get these better approaches done, this risk-based approach down, newer tech, newer equipment, so we can have things like these cures, these gene therapy, these cell therapy drugs out the door faster. It shouldn't take so long to validate the systems, and it shouldn't take so long to get the drugs out. And this is the beginning of that. And with this newer technology and this type of approach, this is how we get there. So that is it for me. And I wanted to thank everybody for their time. I appreciate you guys coming today. And Darren, thanks for joining me on this conversation too.
More than welcome, James. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you both for that. A great presentation, a great discussion, and we do have plenty of questions here. We've got 14 in the Q&A module, plenty more in the chat. We will not have time to get to all of them, but like I said, as long as you put them in the Q&A module and as long as it has your name on it, we will follow up with you after the webinar. So make sure if you haven't put your Q&As in the Q&A box that you do that before we get to the end. But I'm going to take some of the most upvoted here first. And first one from Donna. Should be an easy one for you, Darren. Does Kneat support automated testing?
Sadly, no, we don't support automated testing at the moment, but it's always something we're looking to improve. We're always looking to improve the product. So that's something that's possibly going to be on our roadmap in the future. But at the moment, it's digitizing your process to make sure it's a more efficient process in Kneat. So, let's get away from paper. Paper's messy, paper's old, paper's been around since the time of the Egyptians. We should be using more digitized approach at the moment, but unfortunately, it doesn't support automated testing at the moment.
All right. And then one here from Joseph. I think this came in when you were talking about GMP 5. Do you know even a rumor when this will happen? And then Joseph also submitted a second one here saying, sorry, hit enter too early. From the CSA draft guidance, this guidance will supersede Section 6, validation of automated process equipment and quality system software of the software validation guidance. It would help a lot selling. Do we have even a rumor of when this will happen?
Not on my end.
Not
No,
on my
it
end
took
either,
them
no.
forever to get the original CSA guidance out. I mean, we were waiting for that for a long time, just like the
Yeah, that
quality
was
metrics one too. So
yeah,
even continued process verification was a rumor for years before it came out. So I have no idea on that.
yeah. They're glacial changes, aren't they? Really, did James? They take so long to make a change.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next one then. From a viewer named Darren, how are we going to effectively train resources that can actually perform an effective risk assessment and apply critical thinking?
That's a good question.
It's a good question. Not to throw it back at you, but I would throw it back at you, right? How do you train your staff, right? When we think about critical thinking, and it's been mentioned here by James, right? This isn't the case of we'll make it up per project, right? There has to be a scientific basis between how you define something as high risk, say low risk, and medium risk, right? So what's going to be scripted testing, unscripted testing, and possibly even ad hoc testing, right? So to go back with James as well, like you do have to train your staff on that. This is a mindset change, and James, you've emphasized it a few times, and you're 100% right. This is a mindset change, as opposed to somebody who says, "I've been doing this since the '80s. Let's stick with paper." You need to train them to change the mindset, and I think your last slide, James, was very effective. If you want to change the way you live, change the way you think, and that's what you're going to have to do in terms of that. That would be my answer to that, James. I couldn't tell you how
No,
to train your people, so
yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, you set that baseline as best you can at the beginning for understanding risk and how to apply it, and then you're going to have to train them on it. And you're going to have some testing modules of ways for them to, leverage other platforms to actually train on critical thinking. And that's a whole nother can of worms, right? That's a tough one. It is a mindset change, and again, I don't think that's something that we have the exact answer to either, right?
yeah.
You
And
know.
I think James, you actually said right, like changing, like transition to CSA, kind of has to come from the top down. The
Yeah.
buy-in has to be from the top down, because you know,
People will not change how they do things if it doesn't come from above them,
mhm,
and in a way that is effectively said, in a way that is encouraging, and in a way that is not dictated. It has to be makes things better, easier, more efficient, and it should make somebody's job. They should want to do this, right?
yeah.
And that's why the messaging from the top of an organization is so important to getting something like this adopted.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you for that. Another one from Joseph, who was pointing out a question from the chat. Do we have experience from other regulatory bodies' approach to CSA?
Don't know of any other regulatory bodies, James, that are looking to implement CSA. I mean, the FDA is the
This
one that put this one.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Darren, I'll jump in. This one was originally from Terry in the
Cool.
chat, who said, my experience is the FDA may be okay with the risk-based approach. However, other regulatory bodies are not. Do you have any guidance for helping other regulatory bodies understand the approach the FDA is suggesting we use? That might help
Oh,
add a bit more context.
Okay, right. So we're talking, say, the EU approach to medicines
Right.
board, all the other ones around the world. Right. Well, the way I look at it, and as James mentioned earlier, right, these are regulations, right? They don't change. They rarely they change slower than the guidance documents, right? They've always taken the least burdensome approach, and the GAMP guidance, James, as you mentioned, that shows you a best practice of how to implement it to meet those regulations,
Mhm.
kind of worldwide, James. I think. So if you've GAMP, which is created by pharmaceutical and biological professionals who get together to show you the best practice to implement it, they're talking about risk based approaches as well. I mean, I couldn't see how somebody in Europe would turn around and say, right, you've done risk assessment to sell your product in the States. We're taking a completely different tack and a completely different approach.
Right.
It doesn't kind of make sense to me that they'd see it all that different when you consider GAMP is it's a great guidance document and really tells you how to not tells you but guides you better how to implement it. And they've got an entire chapter on risk. That's how valuable they view it in GAMP. Like, let's look at this as a particular chapter to help us bring in the CSA approach. I mean, James, what do you think? I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
the view on these
No.
would vary wildly.
No, I mean, I think honestly, if like the FDA could come, hopefully has enough success stories of this
Mm.
and that they can speak to and maybe even get companies to speak with them, then that would absolutely be the home run for this and getting like the EU or another regulatory agency to adopt this approach because it's, they're say prove it, right? And if they can, as the auditor said, they're seeing a ton of success in this, but are companies going to be willing to share that and how and why? And unfortunately, and that might not be the case, even though it's a generalized approach that could be used anywhere. It's getting everybody here to care about each other and actually sharing this knowledge, and then that would be the home run to getting that done. So maybe they'll be able to do that and have those use cases that they can, help bring to all these other companies and other regulatory agencies to help speed things up across, not just the United States, but the world.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. More great questions coming in. Here is one from Donna. CSA is being adopted outside of QMS and devices, so I wouldn't worry about the narrow scope of the guidance, particularly if you look at the content of the guidance. So, more of a comment here, but any responses, any thoughts on this?
Well, I suppose initially when CSA was, if you look at who published the CSA guidance, I think, James, it's actually the kind of radiological and biological side of
Mhm.
the FDA. So I'd look at that and say, yeah, that it was initially started up with a narrow guidance for medical devices, but I think it could be used for any software system that's developed in any part of the pharmaceutical or any other industry in that. Because as you were saying, James, it's common sense. It makes sense to do
Yeah,
this, to be
I think,
honest.
yeah, that's a good comment. I don't think to add to it.
Mm.
Excellent. And then a question follow up from Donna as well. Are you going to demonstrate how to use Neat to document guided but unscripted testing? So I can already say we're not going to demonstrate Neat today because we are very much almost out of time. But we do have a demonstration of Neat every month. We have a demo webinar that we show off what Neat does, how you can use Neat. It is very much an overview. It's not very specific to use cases, and we don't take requests on how to do anything. But you can also always schedule a one-on-one demo from our website. Schedule a one-on-one demo to ask more in depth, have a one-on-one experience with a an engineer to talk through what Neat can be used for, how you can use it yourself. But Darren, anything you want to talk to on unscripted testing within Neat?
No, well, we do have some articles on our Neat website as well, and it does give you. Look, it's just a kind of image how you would create a template in Neat to do unscripted, ad hoc, and scripted testing, and it's one of our CSA articles. If you go in and have a look, I just don't have the link at the moment. If you go in and have a look, there's an image of an example of one of those on our website.
Excellent. Thank you. And next question from Darren. Since most SaaS vendors don't have a truly effective SDLC and or QMS, how are we going to leverage their documentation?
Right, that's a bit of a biggie. We're a SaaS supplier, Neat, and we have a truly effective SDLC and QMS. So, look, I suppose this goes back to what I always think about it is like you're dealing with Neat, who is a large company. We sell you a configurable off-the-shelf system, right? And as you mentioned earlier, though, we're ISO 9001 compatible. We're 27001 compatible. We live and die by our quality and what we send to you and the quality of our documentation. Because, as you said earlier, James, the event of an audit, we could have to come in and speak to how Kneat was deployed, right? No, that's Kneat. No, maybe what you're talking about, Darren, is the term I use is two guys in a shed. There's two guys in the company. Somebody says we need to use these two guys. I wouldn't depend on them for anything, right?
Yeah, what you leverage is going to be based on the outcome of your
Yeah.
audit, right? So
Mm.
your vendor audit is going to truly, dictate if you're saying if it's not truly effective, you pretty much know you're not going to be able to reference it and use
Yeah.
it anyways. But like you're going to audit them to the best of your ability and see what they have, and then a lot of these guys will actually make a lot of changes to their platforms too if you suggest them, and maybe work yourself out a nice deal on that platform. Say, hey, look, here's what I'm going to tell you needs to be done to this so we can leverage this in the future for you to advance your own self, and maybe you'll get that software platform for a little cheaper. But
Exactly. Nice.
the two guys in the shed, that's the real deal. And software can come out so fast now and be deployed so quickly. You do have to be careful. That's why having like a really rigorous audit process and someone
Yeah.
that knows software systems to go through it is critical to leveraging their internal testing and QMS, et cetera.
Yeah, and like sometimes, as you said, James, like sometimes when you're auditing them, I mean, the result of the audit could come back saying it's an absolutely fantastic product, but
Right.
we can't take these. We can't bring this company on board because we don't know. They don't have a QMS. They don't have an SDLC.
No control.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're going with someone else.
Yeah. I've seen it.
Mm.
Absolutely. Good
Excellent.
question.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. That was a great question. We are right at 257, 258 here. So I am going to call it. We have 15 more questions in the Q&A module. More and more have been coming in. We started with 14. We got through a good chunk of them and still have 15 left somehow. So, and I know that there are more in the chat as well. This has been a really great topic. And it's been really great to hear from you, James, and Darren as well. So maybe with all this interest, we'll have to have you back. But again, I will mention to everyone, if we didn't get to your question, as long as it wasn't submitted anonymously, we will have a Kneat representative. We'll get the answers from Darren and James after we're off of here. We'll get those answers back to you in a personalized email. The other email that you can expect to receive here in the coming days, hopefully by the end of the week, but if not, early next week, is a thank you email for coming or a sorry we missed you. And those both will include a link to the recording where you can come back and watch this video again, hear the answers again, hear the presentation again, and the slides as well. So you can reference that great picture of James McAvoy at the end, but also James's title slide and his contact information in there, as well as any other slides in the middle that you might want to look at. So all of that will be sent to you. I know that was a question that came in as well. But again, really want to thank those in the audience who came to join us. Darren for backing up from the Kneat perspective, but most importantly, James Irons for joining us, and from MMR Consulting for letting him spend his time here with us.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks for
you
having me.
both, gentlemen. Really, really great having you here. I will talk a little bit about some resources from Kneat that you can still see. There is a QR code here, and this will be included in the slides as well. Suju, I will say, you just asked in the chat, can you have James's email? Yes, it is in the slides. So keep an eye out for that email that'll come with the slides. Like I said, hopefully by the end of the week. If you don't have it early next week, feel free to email us and we can get that to you. James has said that we can share his email. So we will definitely send that to you. In the meantime, you can check out our guide or your guide to CSA and how to leverage CSA to streamline your CSV processes here on our Kneat website. It's a great piece of content that our teams have put together. You can scan that QR code and find that link on our website as well. Here's where you can hear from Kneat moving forward. We have some more webinars coming up as we end out the year, and we also have some conferences coming up where you can see us in person. So for webinars, thank you. James put his email in the chat as well, so you can take that there. So perfect. For webinars coming up, like I mentioned at the end, towards the end of every month, we have a Kneat software demo. So that demo will be next week, November 20th, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. You can come see that demo happen. You can ask your questions live, very much like we did today, and you can see Kneat Gx in action if this has inspired you to do that. You can find that registration on our website and on our social media pages. And then finally, at the beginning of December, we're going to hear the AI advantage in pharma. Another one of our partners, Vector, Life Sciences is coming on to talk about the AI advantage in pharma. AI has been a hot topic, especially when it comes to Pharma 4.0. So be sure to check out that webinar in December. Registration for that is opening today. So be sure to check out our website, and again, follow us on social media to see that. Conferences in person, if you are going to either Kennex Validation and GMP University in Europe, in Dublin, we'll be there on November 19th. Kneat is sponsoring that, so Kneat will have a presence there. And then again, CSV and CSA University in Washington, D.C., where I am, on December 10th, so you can come out and see us there. But again, plenty of opportunities to see Kneat. Here's our contact information. You can find us on social media, on our website, or call those numbers or email us. Plenty of ways to get in contact with us if you want more information about Kneat or Kneat Gx. And finally, another QR code here. And again, you'll receive links in your emails, but we really appreciate your feedback on our webinars. Your feedback helps build and expand our webinar programs. We want to hear how we did today, how we can improve, and more importantly, what you want to hear about in the future. Are there specific topics you'd like to hear about? Go ahead and fill out that feedback survey, linked there and linked in the emails that you'll receive thanking you. That feedback really helps us grow and includes you in part of our process, which we're really trying to build the community here. So again, I've said it so many times, but thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again on another Kneat Insights webinar. Have a great day.